Good evening, everyone. On this November 3rd night, it is looking at that clock, and now I'm realizing with our graphic, the daylight savings time has not quite changed. The temperature is correct, though, a nice 53 degrees outside. We're just going to bring that down. But enjoying that view from our SkyTrack network, enjoying the lights on this clear night. And yeah, I'm just taking a nice break to kind of keep tabs of what today has brought. Taking a look at all the lights on the downtown Louisville skyline. So now that 9:05 time is up, the correct time it is 8:05. Hope everyone was able to adjust their clocks at home, their ovens, microwaves. Maybe your cars still have that manual analog option, the buttons you got to switch to have the correct time. And starting off our work week, first full week of November strong. I'm Jose Sosaya here in the Wave Now studio for tonight's edition of Wave News Extra. And with that, we're going to jump right into some breaking news, or at least it's been a pretty hectic story that we've been following ever since it was breaking news coming into our newsroom. And this is out of Meade County, as we're trying to get more details about a murder investigation. So Kentucky State Police telling us there was a victim, unfortunately, 55-year-old Mary Crace of Brandenburg. She was killed, at least one gunshot, and they believe the suspect is the person whose picture you see here in this graphic is Scott Hornback, 45-year-old Scott Hornback. Investigators tell us Hornback left the scene before police arrived. Now, if you see him, police say to call 911 right away. Do not approach him because they are considering him armed and dangerous. We believe this is still a pretty active search by KSB, and should we get any more updates as far as, also sending a crew out there to see what there is for investigators to try and add to their investigation, evidence, clues, all that information. We'll try to get you that as soon as we can here in the Wave newsroom for tonight. If it is breaking, while we're here in this hour on the live stream, or perhaps a more concrete update coming in around for Wave News at 11. So hope you stick around with us and join us for those updates as well. Another update tonight where we've learned Brooks Houck is in custody at another facility after he was transferred out of the Oldham County Detention Center today. You're familiar, probably quite so, if you followed us here on Wave News Extra, with the story of Brooks Houck being one of three men convicted in the case of the disappearance and presumed murder of Crystal Rogers, the mom from Bardstown, last seen more than 10 years ago. Houck was actually sentenced to life in prison for the case. He's currently appealing the conviction, and the judge has not yet ruled on that particular motion. Now, in more of the news we've been following through this afternoon, heading into the evening, police say a man was found shot just this morning in the Algonquin neighborhood. This was a shooting from last night. And so LMPD officers responded to a call actually just after 10:30 in the morning on Moore Court, not far from the Park Hill Community Center. But police say they found a man who they believe to be in his 60s. He was shot several times in the legs. Police say they took him to the hospital. He was awake, alert, conscious. Now, police later determined that this guy, was shot last night near 26th and Herman Streets in the Shawnee neighborhood. It's not clear how the man exactly got to this new location here you see on Hill Street where he was found. But so far, no suspects have been arrested in this case. Should you have any information, a glancing pass at something that might jog your memory, police are hoping you do reach out and give them a call sometime tonight or tomorrow. Among the big stories we've been following to sort of close out the month of October, now heading into the rest of November. And for a lot of families in Kentucky and Southern Indiana tonight, especially those who might be relying on their SNAP benefits, some relief to help put food on the table. The White House announcing today they've agreed to partially fund SNAP benefits using some contingency funds. Millions of Americans did not receive their full November SNAP benefits over the weekend because of the still going government shutdown. If you're familiar, on Friday we discussed the big update was in a court ruling to try and get that funding. Rhode Island judge ordered the Department of Agriculture to pay out funding, either making a full payment by the end of the day today or a partial payment by Wednesday. The Trump administration today, saying it would use all $4.65 billion in contingency funds to cover about half of each eligible household's benefits for the month. However, the administration also said it would need at least $4 billion in additional government funds to provide full SNAP benefits. So some context for you as we're starting out the week. Some food assistance groups here locally still are very much all hands on deck in their operations to counter those disruptions for families relying on their food benefits. One of those being Metro United Way, very much seeing, as they are describing it, a heavy demand. And it's through a new program that they just started. It's the Hardship to Hope Relief Campaign. Well, today they were supposed to accept online applications from 8 until noon. There were so many applications, though, that were submitted, they shut down their portal for that in just 15 minutes. Wave News reporter David Mattingly has this report for us.
Announced on Friday in its first session, launched 8 a.m. Monday, the website for Hardship to Hope Food Relief was supposed to be open until noon. But it took just 15 minutes for applicants to see this. The page was shut down after it reached a limit on applications for Kroger gift cards.
It tells us that there are a lot of people out there right now who need food and that they've have questions around where their lifeline for support to get that food is going to be.
I filled it out about 5 times. I couldn't get it through. It was denying my email.
Jayla Holder was one of the frustrated people not getting through. The single mother and her teenage son count on $500 from SNAP to get through the month, and she needs groceries now.
This is like halfway gone. Like these boxes are like empty. You know, this thing is empty.
Holder says her only option is to spend hours collecting food from different food banks. It's time she doesn't have, trying to hold down a part-time job, be a mom, and work on her PhD.
And I'm going to find out, just how hard it is, without the government support, trying to find jobs, trying to find housing, trying to find, education without any help at all. And I don't think I'm going to be able to do it.
There is anxiety on the part of both SNAP recipients and the people trying to help them, and both try to maneuver their way back to food security after the disruption of an essential lifeline. As Metro United Way works to ramp up its ability to take applications, it wants people who have trouble getting through to keep trying.
In the event that you can't do that and you need access to other food supports, please go on, visit our community food resource guide, or call 211 and they can get you connected to other resources within the community.
That was our David Mattingly with that report, and Metro United Way reporting that as far as financial support, that is still coming in strong. That they say, Metro United Way, they got $162,000 in donations since just Friday. So from Friday, Saturday, Sunday into today, that amount of money to help bolster that demand for the kind of supply that people are now requiring as far as the disruption in their food benefits, for sure. Well, sometimes we do have an ability to turn our SkyTrack camera to observe if there's anything going on that our cameras can detect. And what we could see just based on the angle there, we do have a switch as our, this is our newsroom digital desk, probably looking for different angles. Perhaps this was a crash. It looks like a crash and a shutdown for this flow of traffic on one of our main highway intersections here. Based on the look of it, looking like somewhere in Spaghetti Junction. We'll try and see if we can get an update from our news desk and see if maybe there's some updates coming into our email and let you know about any traffic issues if you know somebody who's trying to get around town, or maybe you need to go somewhere else tonight. When we do come back after this commercial break on Wave News Extra, we're going to discuss part of what's going to be our big report from our Julie Richardson tonight, and that's going to be sort of the expectation with the reaction now that in the state of Indiana, the decision to pause new childcare vouchers heading into 2026. Talking to a daycare owner about what she feels like the impacts are going to be, and just to let you all know, that's the focus of Julia's report, plus the state's response as to how they were trying to maneuver as far as their explanation for funding was concerned. That's going to coming up after this commercial break. Much more, of course, still for the rest of this hour on Wave News Extra. So we'll take this quick pause with commercial break and be right back. Hey everyone, welcome back in. Thanks for joining us and sticking around for Wave News Extras. So what I failed to realize was, as this was playing for you, and I've got my videos and cues set up, there's a timestamp that should let me know this was actually, this is recorded from our news desk, but if you look at that date, so that tells me this was actually indicating evidence of a crash that already happened. So my bad on that. But it is the relevant B-roll to this update, actually. So I'm like, let you all know that as far as this case and the video you're watching here is concerned, it was on I-64 East and I-65. And we've now learned the name of a driver LMPD says was actually hit and killed trying to run away from a crash. And so sorry, my bad on there. And just to clear up what this B-roll is relating to specifically, this video. So the Jefferson County coroner telling us 20-year-old Christian Shively died from his injuries. This happened just after 2 a.m. on Friday. So this was, around Halloween night, so to speak, I-64 East and I-65. Police saying Shively was driving a Hyundai when he rear-ended a Land Rover, then jumped out of a car, tried to run. And that's when he was hit on I-64 West, and you're seeing the sort of the backup congestion. So it all having to do with the crash that then turned into an investigation from police. So just to, I'll clarify that on my end. And that's when he was hit on I-64 West. The driver who hit Shively stayed at the scene and was not charged. And so that is what you're watching in front of you. Old video of what would have happened in this crash on I-64. Good thing I caught myself on that one for sure. All right. Now moving into the story of what's going on tonight that our Wave News team was looking into. Was checking in with local daycares actually about what could be the consequences of Indiana's decision on a state level to pause granting new childcare vouchers. So that's heading into 2026's cycle. Now, we did get a response from the Indiana Family and Social Services Administration just relating to the overall decision and what the impact is going to be for families moving forward. I want to play the statement we did receive in response. So this is quote from FSSA that the prior administration over-enrolled kids is the statement using temporary COVID funding and that plan to cut the total number of vouchers in half this year to cover the funding gap. And you're going to move on to the rest of the statement here, saying that Governor Braun stopped that from happening. And instead, we have paused awarding new vouchers, cut contracts, and reduced provider rates so that we wouldn't have to kick kids and their families off of the waivers, end quote. That's the official response we received from a representative with Indiana FSSA. So knowing what's the issue involved, what we wanted to share part of this conversation and interview our Wave News reporter Julie Richardson had was with the daycare owner on the potential fallout for her and for the families who are her clients. Her name is Holly Roberts. I'm going to make sure I look at her business name. Holly Roberts owns the Childcare Partners Preschool and Daycare. And so this is part of the conversation that Julie Richardson was having relating to what folks involved, daycare owners, staff, parents up in Southern Indiana and overall in Indiana are thinking about tonight.
Getting as many CCDF voucher enrollments. And then we officially learned in July that the state of Indiana had placed them on a wait list. And ironically, I found that there was a news release in December of 2024 stating that there was going to be a wait list, which would have been good information to know to make business decisions. But so then they announced that the rates were going to be cut, and that started October 5th. They first told us that the school age program was going to be cut by 35%, which was going to be the most of all of the programs. And then when it came to fruition, it was actually about 52%. So we lost, they were funding school agers at $115 a week during school care and reduced that to $55. So my options are to ask the parents to pay that gap, which they can't afford. And unfortunately, today we are announcing that we are discontinuing our school age program in January. Will be our last after this winter break because I can't afford to provide care for $55 a week. We have to transport the children, which means I have to have buses, I have to have insurance, and I have to pay someone to leave the building to go get the children and back. So it was a difficult decision. Many of our school agers have been with us since my parents owned it, and we've known them for many, many years since they were babies, and it's hard to make that decision. But I have to do what is best for the center to be able to keep our doors open because there are so many centers that are closing and parents are really struggling to be able to find care. And that's the hardest thing is that the state makes it look like somehow that this is the childcare centers that we are at fault or that we're charging too much, but we don't set the rates. The state sets voucher rates. And the low-income families are the ones that are impacted the most here. A single mom or two parents that are struggling can't afford daycare, and so they're the ones that are going to miss this opportunity. And then that impacts the entire community because now they can't go to work or they can't go to school to get better education, to get better jobs. And what we're going to see is what we saw after COVID, which is parents staying home and jobs not being filled. So the large effect of this on the community is really going to be, I think, more faceted than the state maybe sees.
And so that was part of our Julia Richardson's interview with the daycare owner. They're just going to have much more perspective from her tonight and from parents and sort of breaking down a little further the context of what the state's FSSA response is to now the policy decision when it comes to the voucher program for sure. So as we move into more stories, we're going to stay covering some Indiana related stories. In fact, part of it is relating to today being actually exactly a year until midterm elections, and congressional maps in Indiana are likely going to change before voters exercise their right and go to the polls. Last week, Governor Mike Braun called lawmakers back to the Capitol for a special redistricting session. And so this was part of our story that our Wave News reporter Logan Perrone was doing today at a luncheon for the governor, and then also talking to protesters pushing back against that special session. The governor's decision is the result of a request by the Trump administration for new maps favoring Republicans in several states. New maps would likely result in some Democrats losing the only 2 House seats they currently hold in Indiana. Normally, a redrawing of maps happens every 10 years. The current maps were approved by state lawmakers back in 2021. Now, today, a nonprofit group called Do Something Indiana rallied outside of the Grand, where Governor Braun was doing a fireside chat event. Many of the protesters this morning called the move undemocratic, saying redrawing the map should not be a priority when there are other issues that Indiana is dealing with.
If we want to change them, we'll do that in 6 more years. I think gerrymandering has been done probably all over the country at many times, but it doesn't help to not represent the people who have elected you.
Indiana lawmakers have 40 days from today to complete the special session. And today, State House Speaker Todd Houston announced time-sensitive matters will be taken up in the first 2 weeks of December. Now, at Wave News, we did reach out to Congresswoman Erin Houchin's office again. We didn't get a reply for our request for comment on the redistricting or last week when we previously were covering the story. I would urge you to go check out the story right now on wave3.com of Logan's full report beyond just what we were able to see from the outside of the event hall, because Logan was also able to, get as part of some press gaggle coverage to hear Governor Braun's arguments for redrawing the maps. So that is all available for you in his story up right now on wave3.com. Staying in stories with stories on updates in Indiana more tonight, Jefferson County, Indiana prosecutors filed a 40-second charge against the barbecue smoker company that was exposed by the Wave troubleshooters, if you're familiar, just this past summer. The owner of Southern Smokers, Jeffrey Briscoe, arrested and charged with multiple counts of theft in early May for taking customers' money, but not building them smoker trailers or even offering refunds. Now, Briscoe has been in jail ever since, unable to post a $250,000 bond. He's asked the judge to reduce it and to move his case to Clark County. Well, we've learned prosecutors filed this latest charge after learning a customer went to Southern Smokers the day before Briscoe was arrested and paid $6,800 for a smoker that was to be finished in 2 to 3 weeks. Police say at the time of that purchase, Briscoe had 40 other orders in his queue that he had not completed or even gave refunds to yet. Briscoe has pleaded not guilty to all of his charges, and his actual trial has now been pushed back to April. Bring you back here into the studio. Now, perhaps a lot of you folks have been frustrated for the sort of nagging communication on your smartphones, even over to your houses about debt collection calls. Well, apparently they're spiking nationwide, and consumer advocates are tracking this sudden surge. They say the tactics to get a hold of us and you are getting more aggressive, including calling numbers at all hours of the day. And the timing important too, as we're going to approach now the holidays, being early November, but soon Thanksgiving and Christmas will be here. And so in this Watching Your Wallet update from consumer investigative reporter Carice Jackman, she looks into debt dialing and what the safety experts are saying consumers can do to look out for themselves.
The calls can be ridiculous. They just call in at all times on a day. They just want the money. They don't care what time they call you, how many times, they try to act like they're your friends or family. I would say I probably was like $40,000 in credit card debt.
Shortly after her divorce in 2020 was the beginning of Kiana Blake's debt downfall.
I went from 2 incomes to 1, but just about the same amount of bills. So they just started calling me. So I had so many cards that I had like an Excel spreadsheet. If it's highlighted, it was a credit card that I was trying to work on paying off.
Mentally, what does that do to you when you're getting, especially the aggressive ones, the kind of threatening debt collector calls?
I would say it stresses you out. It almost makes you, kind of want to comply. More aggressive ones, you probably tend to pay first because, they're going to call you.
Blake is not alone. Millions of Americans face mountains of debt, which, when unresolved, lead to nonstop calls from debt collectors. And while legitimate debt collectors have the right to call, experts tell us many still blur the line on what's ethical versus harassment. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, or FDCPA, makes it illegal for debt collectors to harass or threaten you when trying to collect on a debt. For example, collectors can't generally do things like threaten violence, use obscene language, or repeatedly call someone with the intent to annoy them.
Well, it can be very deceitful. The first thing that I always tell people is initially, before you make any arrangements, any agreements with anybody, you ask them to send you validation of the debt in writing.
Debt collection reports from the Federal Trade Commission show that calls are surging from 219,000 in 2024 to over 278,000 so far this year. That's around 27%. And 41% of consumers reported receiving calls for debt they did not owe or found the calls were abusive and threatening.
They think that Because the person is coming off aggressive, they feel threatened. They feel like I have to make the decision at this moment. And that's just really not the case.
Investigate TV combed through 15,000 consumer complaints made to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, dating back 10 years about frequent debt collection calls. We found most of the complaints surrounded credit cards, medical debt, auto, and payday loans. Danny Karen is a consumer attorney, law professor, and author. He's had his own battle fighting with debt collectors in the courtroom and recently settled a case for $7.5 million dealing with these exact problems. When does it become illegal?
It's illegal when a debt collector crosses the line, when they do certain things that the FDCPA says they can't do. They call earlier than they should, they call after they should. They threaten, they lie, they say the debt is worth more than it is. They say they're going to sue you. Certain ugly things that border on harassment or are harassment are things that often check or trigger the FDCPA and can trigger a federal case.
So how are things right now, Kiana? Are things looking up? How are they right now?
I would say things are definitely looking up from about 40,000 to probably like 13,000. So I should have that paid off in the next year or so.
And have the calls stopped?
Absolutely, because I'm not behind on anything. No reason to call me.
As investigative reporter Carice Jackman there. Now, if you're having issues with a debt collector yourself or someone close to you, you can also file a complaint if it's ever crossing that line beyond just the standard sort of information that should be shared. You could file a complaint with your state's attorney general, so the Kentucky Attorney General's office, the Indiana Attorney General's office. And if you're also in need of legal help, you can visit certain resources, can navigate or help you navigate and try to settle things as reasonably as possible for you. One of those, as part of this Watching Your Wallet compilation of resources, it's a website called lawhelp.org. And if you're looking for the specific kind of help, you should be able to find it on there for sure. All right, we have much more to get to here on Wave News Extra. We're going to take this commercial break and be right back. 8:34 on this Monday night. Welcome back into the Wave Now studio for the latest of our stories as we're unpacking a lot of the updates, headlines, stories we've been checking in on throughout this Monday morning into the evening. On a national scale, at my last check, actually, with folks at SDF, no real big logistical headaches for travelers, passengers, in the sense that it's affected air traffic controller scheduling. But this past weekend marked the worst one yet for these shortages ever since the government shutdown started back on October 1st. So the FAA says, based on their data, they're reporting there were 98 quote, staffing trigger reports at FAA facilities between Friday morning and this past Sunday night. What that means essentially is that air traffic controllers had to change operations to keep airspace safe with fewer people working. Alterations mean things like rerouting planes or even delaying some flights. The FAA says the, quote, surge in controllers calling out Halloween actually, quote, strained staffing at half of the 30 biggest airports in the U.S. Air traffic controllers are considered essential staff, and they have to work during the government shutdown despite not getting paid. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said that some controllers called sick in protest while others were taking time off to work other jobs where they would be making some money. Now, back here in Louisville Metro, more than $1 million are going to be split between 7 groups working to help those who are dealing with homelessness across the city. These are home initiative grants that are being awarded to groups that include Volunteers of America Mid-States, Wayside Christian Mission, and the YMCA of Greater Louisville. These are groups that provide essential services to folks who are experiencing homelessness, things like case management, emergency shelter, and trying to focus on support when there's inclement weather events. And in this case, as we go through the winter, later fall, then into winter, about the cold weather, what that could bring. The director of the St. John Center talked to us this afternoon about how their team is going to use their share of the funds that they received.
We are expanding our day shelter to provide overnight shelter. And this is not something we do with a light heart, right? We believe that and know that the solution to chronic homelessness is housing. And that is really where we are excited to invest. But we know that we have to keep people alive, right, in order to move them into housing.
The St. John Center says it'll provide 20 shelter beds during cold winter nights. Right now, they're working to expand their access to beds at other organizations as well as faith-based institutions. And the spirit, or I should say, when it comes to matters of trying to stay warm for the winter, today, actually just starting today, folks can apply for help with heating your home. So those applications are open if you're familiar with LIHEAP. LIHEAP stands for Low Income Home Emergency Assistance Program. It's the fall subsidy providing families who are eligible with that financial support for heating costs. Applications are accepted on a first come, first serve basis, and they're open for you to apply until December 12th. The amount of money families receive depends on several factors. You'd have to disclose your income level and the fuel type that you use in your apartment or your home for that heating. An update tonight from Indiana State Police, who say they solved a 29-year-old cold case, and they arrested a Tennessee man thanks to some DNA samples that they say they were able to connect to 53-year-old Sammy Wayne Riley, a former resident of Scott County who was living in Tennessee in Campbell County. And ISP believes tonight that he's responsible for raping a woman in Austin, Indiana back in 1996. The victim gave a name she thought was the suspect's. DNA confirmed the person was not that attacker. Nearly 3 decades went by, no leads, until a forensic scientist used newer DNA testing to identify a close genetic relative of the original suspect. And after some additional testing, police say they were able to identify Riley as the accused rapist. He was arrested Saturday and is now being held in the Scott County, Indiana jail. Bringing you back here into the studio. It's a continuation into some reporting that part of our Wave News team has been looking into, wrapping up the month of October and still relevant as we're rounding out the year 2025. On a national scale for policy stories, because the Trump administration has made a drastic cut to the number of refugees who are allowed to resettle within the U.S. The president also saying that some applicants will be given priority in the process, namely white South Africans. Now, our Wave News reporter, Fernando Garcia Franceschini, has been following this particular policy implication for some time, and he's talking and checking in with some local leaders who are worried about what the impact is going to look like here in Louisville.
President Trump has set a record low ceiling for the amount of refugees allowed to resettle in the U.S. at 7,500. Under the Biden administration, that number was 125,000. I spoke with people who work with the local refugee community here in Louisville, and they say this decision could have a big local impact.
This is legitimately a humanitarian crisis. The refugee camps are not less crowded. They have not become less crowded since January 20th, just because the U.S. has stopped helping people to get out of the camps.
Catholic Charity CEO Lisa DiGiaco-Crutcher is critical of the Trump administration's decision, especially since it's coming after the White House stopped all refugee admissions in January.
Refugees aren't just legal immigrants, they're invited. We choose them. From all the people who are displaced in the world, we give an opportunity to be resettled.
But in this case, it's white South Africans will be given priority, a move immigration attorney Duffy Traeger says doesn't make sense.
There is not a civil war going on in South Africa right now.
President Trump says the decision is due to humanitarian concerns, but Traeger says the cut in admissions means many refugees in Louisville now won't be able to reunite with their loved ones, some of whom were in line to come to the U.S.
There's approximately 128,000 people that have done what they were supposed to, were in line, went through the vetting, and are waiting for their fair shot. And they've sort of had the rug yanked out from under them. And that's just really, really tragic.
Catholic Charities emphasizes that these refugees would also come to Louisville and contribute to the economy. They say resettling is an investment for the government.
After 20 years, a refugee's paid for him or herself. And the longer you look at it, the more money the government is making off the tax revenue from having resettled these people into the community.
Reporting in Louisville, Fernando Garcia Franceschini, Wave News.
Another look right now at our live SkyTrack camera observing the downtown lights, the bottom of your frame there, the KFC Yum Center. By the way, discussion with the college basketball season starting up soon and the sports team. Looking forward to a lot of programs locally of interest to a lot of fans. It's not just, of course, the big names like Louisville and Kentucky, but a lot of basketball starting to pick up. And so that was just a refresher of my mind that if you join us tonight on Wave News at 11, Kendrick Dusty working hard to break some of that intel and previews down for us. One more break before we kind of round out some of the last bits of stories for tonight's live stream. You're watching Wave News Extra. $8:44, and always appreciate you folks sticking around for most of our hour here on the Wave News Extra live stream. A heads up, by the way, for any services impacting one of Louisville Free Public Library's locations. So you see the scale of the work there. This is the main library in downtown. It's going to close to the public for up to 12 months, and the closure is on December 1st, so Monday, December 1st, coming up in just under a month. Contractors originally thought the branch could stay open during this $8 million renovation project, but they said the work and the new challenges are going to make it difficult to do it all safely with folks still inside checking books and materials out. Now, the main library is the largest branch within the state of Kentucky. Many people come to the branch for a variety of services and tasks, but the renovation, the goal being that they want to expand services and provide some much needed improvements to the building itself. Now, because of the closure, services are going to have to shift elsewhere, so operational changes at other library branches and the new library digital access center with homeless services, those are going to move to 721 South Brook Street. So if you hear that address mentioned again while the closure for the main library on York Street is going on, the new address to keep in mind is 721 South Brook Street. You can learn more about the changes. We do have the story up on our website you can read up about on wave3.com. An update and a bit of a tribute here. Hall of Fame jockey Pat Day is going to be honored at the Kentucky Derby Museum. He's going to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award at this year's Derby in December event. They're also going to be revealing a new temporary exhibit honoring Pat Day's career. He retired in 2005 with more than 8,800 career wins, including the 1992 Kentucky Derby. Now, Derby in December this year is Thursday, the 11th, from 9 to 5. This free event includes a full day of fun activities, some complimentary gifts, and some prize drawings. And a bit of a story in the world of odd AI adoption, let's say, because hotels are starting to mirror some airlines when it comes to how they're using artificial intelligence. In fact, there's new reporting saying more hotels are now using AI to sell more than just the rooms at those respective facilities, those businesses, those hotels. If you add certain amenities while you're booking, the cost is going to be added to your basic room rate. So we're talking about things like early check-in, a higher floor, a quote, hydration station, otherwise known as bottled water in your room. And it's not just chain hotels, boutique hotels apparently in this reporting are going to use AI to customize as many of these new 2025, 2026 reservations as possible. So we'll see how that all plays out in any future reporting. A reminder for the latest breaking news, our big stories covering, of course, local politics when it's happening across the river in southern Indiana, and really any story from across the Commonwealth and the big national stories, top headlines, all there at your fingertips, at your disposal on the wave3.com homepage, always updated by our digital team working late into the night. And a reminder, we're going to be working hard getting ready for tonight's newscast at 11, original reporting from our Julia Richardson on now the implication, the response, commentary from Indiana Daycare staff, owners, and parents about the decision to pause those new childcare vouchers and what the new policy approach strategy is going to mean for all these stakeholders involved. Chief Meteorologist Kevin Harned walking us through this first week of November, what the weather is going to be like. So far, it's been a welcome change to sort of that rainy gray weather to round out October. Thankfully, Halloween much nicer. Hope everyone had a great Halloween too, by the way. But Kevin's going to walk us through what to expect in the short and the long term, and much more to get into. So always appreciate your time, as this is another avenue to connect with us in the Wave Now studio. I'm Jose Sosaya. Appreciate your time for joining us here on the live stream. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.